Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are tackling a common DIY dilemma: how to remove varnish from a wooden surface. Whether you're restoring an antique piece, or simply giving your furniture a fresh start, removing old varnish is often the first step. So, let's dive into the world of varnish removal, exploring the most popular methods. First, we have chemical compositions. These are powerful solutions designed to break down the varnish, making it easier to scrape or sand off. You'll find a variety of options at your local hardware store, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Some are specifically formulated for stripping varnish, while others are more general-purpose cleaners. Now, let's talk about the process of removing varnish using these chemical compositions. It's a two-stage process, starting with the application of flushing. This involves applying the chemical stripper to the varnished surface, ensuring it's evenly coated. You'll want to follow the instructions on the product label carefully, as some require a specific dwell time for optimal results. After the flushing stage, we move on to the film stage. This involves scraping or sanding off the softened varnish. You can use a scraper, a putty knife, or even a wire brush, depending on the thickness of the varnish and the type of wood. Be sure to wear gloves and eye protection during this process, as the chemical stripper can be irritating to the skin and eyes. Remember, patience is key when removing varnish. It's a process that requires time and care. Don't rush the process, and always work in a well-ventilated area. And there you have it. A comprehensive overview of removing varnish from wood using chemical compositions. Okay, so you've got varnish on your wooden surface and you want to get rid of it. Let's talk about the most popular methods for removing varnish from wood. First, we'll tackle the removal of the varnish itself. This is where things get a little hands-on. You've got a few options here. Chemical strippers, these are your heavy-duty solutions. They are designed to break down the varnish, making it easier to scrape off. You'll find them in a variety of strengths, so choose one that's appropriate for your project. Just remember to wear gloves and a mask when using chemical strippers, and work in a well-ventilated area. Heat guns. Heat guns can be used to soften the varnish, making it easier to scrape off. This method works well on smaller areas, but it can be time-consuming for larger projects. Sanding. This is a more traditional method, but it can be very time-consuming. You'll need to use sandpaper, with a grit that's appropriate for the type of wood you're working with. Start with a coarser grit and work your way up to a finer grit to achieve a smooth finish. Once you've removed the varnish, it's important to neutralize any chemical residue that might be left behind. This is especially important if you used a chemical stripper. You can neutralize the chemical composition by using a solution of water and baking soda. Apply the solution to the surface and let it sit for a few minutes before wiping it off with a clean cloth. Now, let's talk about cleaning by mechanical methods. This is a great option if you want to avoid using chemicals. Scraping. This is a simple and effective way to remove varnish. You can use a scraper, a putty knife, or even a credit card. Just be careful not to damage the wood. Wire brushing. This method is best for removing varnish from rough surfaces. You'll need to use a wire brush with a stiff bristle. Be careful not to apply too much pressure, as this could damage the wood. Finally, we'll touch on thermal treatment. This is a less common method, but it can be effective in some cases. Heat gun. As mentioned earlier, heat guns can be used to soften the varnish, making it easier to scrape off. This method works well on smaller areas, but it can be time-consuming for larger projects. Blowtorch. This is a more extreme method, and it should only be used by experienced professionals. A blowtorch can be used to burn off the varnish, but it can also damage the wood. Remember, when working with wood, it's always best to start with the least aggressive method and work your way up if necessary. And always wear safety gear, like gloves and a mask, when working with chemicals or heat.